Welcome along then to another big match build-up show. This episode is sponsored by OneFootball. Do make sure you check out the excellent free OneFootball app to be notified and kept up to date with the latest scores, news and stats all in one place. To download the OneFootball app, click the link below the show. So we're back after a couple of weeks off after no FA Cup action. The Saints have been to Tenerife and they're back in town after being put through their paces, and this Sunday Saints head to the Emirates Stadium to play Arsenal, the first of 3 games this week. So coming up then on this week's first preview, despite sitting in the bottom 3, we do remain positive about the whole project and don't put it beyond the realms of fantasy to get a result at the Emirates. And as for the opposition, who better to ask about Arsenal than AFTV's Robbie to tell us why Arsenal are making the Europa League an important cup this season, and perhaps maybe sometimes why they have been lacking creativity.
Yeah, Charlie Austin as well. He's got that incredible record against Arsenal, scored every time he's played against them. So if we get him on the pitch, that's guaranteed a goal. Records never end, as we well know. I don't think we need to go into the game fearing Arsenal, and I think the more positive approach, the more aggressive we are, then the more likely we are to come away with either a point or, you know, who knows, maybe even the 3 points.
It will be, I think, more or less the same team. Yeah, it will be very interesting to see if he keeps Ozil in. I was asking a lot of our fans that same question. Does Ozil stay in? For me, without Ozil this season, we've lacked creativity.
So do stay tuned for the full episode, and as usual now the show is available to download in the card above my head if you're watching on YouTube, or available on most audio platforms below the show. And of course it is an away game, so do stick with us to find out your bite-sized away guide and travel advice ahead of Sunday. So less of that and more of this. Time now to kick off our preview as Saints head to the Emirates to play Arsenal. So welcome along then to our first half of our big match build-up show. Saints visit Arsenal this weekend after their Europa League adventures, and Saints after, I suppose, a 2-week break. But on the line this week for this preview, returning the favour as well, I appeared on, well, I suppose not appeared, but I suppose you could hear me on the latest episode of the Saints FC podcast. John, really good to see you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, Freddie. Now with the video as well, after last night's audio escapades. Nice to see your face.
Well, I suppose it's a bit of a tradition now. We ask each other sort of what we're cracking open tonight. For me, it's the Cali by the Tiny Rebel Brewing Company.
Oh, that looks very nice. I've got a little offshore Pilsner here by Sharps Brewery. It's quite nice. I haven't got much left though, so we're going to have to somehow stretch this one out.
Well, we'll have to, I suppose, stretch out the rest of the season to try and pick up some more points. But it does feel like, I suppose, a lifetime ago, nearly 2 weeks ago, the Cardiff City defeat. Obviously, a bitterly disappointing day. I suppose we failed to capitalise on our supposed advantage at home. But 2 points from a possible 9 against relegation rivals is very much underwhelming.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not really good enough, to be honest, Freddie. The performances against Palace and Burnley, I mean, the first 70 minutes against Palace was terrible, but then the last 20 minutes against Palace was great. Performance against Burnley I thought was pretty good. It's a tough place to go and get a point. So I wasn't too disappointed after getting 2 points there, but I was fully expecting Saints to get the 3 points against Cardiff. And, we've seen it once again, like when a team comes and just puts 11 men behind the ball, we don't have the tools to unlock them. Yeah, we seem to struggle
against Cardiff more so probably than, I suppose, the Crystal Palace game and the Burnley game, because I suppose you could look at it, Crystal Palace went for it themselves, created a bit of a gap for our attackers to get in behind, and Burnley, I suppose we could say it was a good point to take away from Turf Moor, but Cardiff, so compact, organised, structured, and obviously a little bit about them in the dressing room because of the situation surrounded the match.
I do genuinely think that the death of Salah has given them a bit more reason to play. I think before then people were saying, Cardiff are gone. It's going to be that bottom three. I mean, I think people always, with the relegation fight, they say people are gone far too early anyway. I suppose it's one of those things that if you're a professional football player, it's going to make you really think how lucky you are to be alive and living your dreams and playing out. Every child who's into football dreams of being a Premier League football player. And, in such tragic circumstances, I wonder if it kind of gave the Cardiff players a bit more resolve and a bit more fight than they normally would have. And, Neil Warnock, if he's going to get his side to do anything, it's going to be that kind of like motivational fighting type spirit. So, obviously it's not a situation that anyone would want to be in, but I think Cardiff have really upped their game as a result of it. I don't know whether that's going to carry on into the rest of the season or if eventually that's, that kind of momentum is going to peter out. I'm not too sure, but I don't think it was a great time for Saints to play Cardiff. But nevertheless, we are a better side than them. We had much more of the ball than them. We had much more chances. We had better chances. And although it was frustrating, we were probably the better side, but Cardiff took their chances and we didn't.
Yeah, well, the statistics suggest that we were the better side, finishing off over 60% possession, much more shots, much more opportunities as well. But I suppose the only positive that we can take is still only 1 point from Saints to Cardiff, who are, obviously now outside the drop zone, who leapfrogged us that weekend. And it's still only 3 points from Saints to Brighton in 13th and Palace around there as well.
Yes, it's all really tight now. Suddenly the relegation battle, which looked like it was only going to be a small handful of teams, it's widened a lot. And I think that's got to be a good thing for Saints, because I do think with Ralph Hasenhuttl, we should start to build up a bit of momentum. And, if you look at, say, the 7-8 teams that are in it now, I would expect us to be in the best 5 of that 8, as it were, which might not sound like a massive ask, but our problems have been growing at Saints, and Hughes and Pellegrino. It's a really tough hangover to shake off. No matter how good Hasenhuttl is, he's got to change the mentality of the players. Like, we know they can do it, but they just need to show a bit more resolve. And let's hope we start to see that going forward.
Well, they've had the week in Tenerife. The boys are back in town, and I'm sure we sort of see all the reports and all the news articles that Ralph spends a lot more time with his attention to detail, with the clipboards, the notice boards out on the training field, and hopefully the boys can actually take something from that and build on their own game. And I hear that each player has been sat down by the manager to have a 15-minute training video to tell them what they've done well, what they've I suppose they haven't done well either as well. But it's going to be another tough week ahead, isn't it? Three games in the space of 6 days.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be really tough, but hopefully the players will be taking on board what he's been telling them in Tenerife. I mean, I don't know if you watched any of the kind of Amazon Prime television program with Manchester City, and looking at how Guardiola kind of has that attention to detail, that real level of involvement. I mean, if you're a player and you haven't been loved by, say, the previous couple of managers, if you've now got a manager who's sitting down one-to-one, giving you particular tips on how you can improve your game, it's got to be a good thing for the players, and hopefully with the defence, he can give them tips on how to defend, crosses and set pieces, and how they can, not lose their heads in times when it's, vitally important. And I don't know how you drill that in a player, but that's why Ralph Hasenhuttl is getting paid millions of pounds a year to do it, and not me.
Well, I suppose if you look on the statistics again, I know you love your statistics, XG, etc., but had Ralph taken over at the beginning of the season, we would have been far more comfortable, sitting quite comfortably in the mid-table, and perhaps a predicted finish of around 50 points. So, for the people to go onto social media and have pretty much a small meltdown to say that we're doomed already, we shouldn't be looking at doom and gloom. We should believe in the process, believe in the manager, and actually believe in ourselves. I
mean, it's one of those things. I saw quite a few people taking to Twitter, for example, then listing out all of the games and being like, where can you see Saints winning from that? And, fair enough, when you've lost at Cardiff at home, it's hard to see you beating anybody, really. Because if you can't beat Cardiff at home, then you don't have a right to beat anyone. But you are right. I mean, his record already with a team which he hasn't had long to work with, it is going to bring in a much bigger points tally if he can keep that going. And I mean, I just really, really hope that we do stay up, because I think a full season under Ralph should be really, really good fun.
And ultimately, that's what we're always building for as well, with the younger players coming through. And that was part of the, I suppose, the criteria for the application back in December when we did eventually sack Mark Hughes as well. But it is Arsenal this weekend, though, and they're not unbeatable. And it was an amazing win down at St Mary's, Ralph's first for Saints. And, of course, that day we halted their 22-match unbeaten run, and they've really sort of become unstuck since then. They hadn't really sort of kicked on properly and not really put a string of games together to build some consistency.
Freddie, they're going to be quaking in their boots. You know, the thing is with Arsenal, I don't think we've got anything to fear. Yes, they've got some really high-quality players, but we've beaten them already this season. That should give us the confidence going into this game. We don't have a bad record at the Emirates. For a big club, it's as good as, you know, our away record at any of the big clubs, really. And, you know, the away support will be good. It'll be strong. They'll chant the whole way through. The Emirates will likely be very, very quiet, you know, from the Arsenal fans. And that just helps. It definitely helps. And, you know, it's a funny thing, because I think with Arsenal, they will attack us, and that will give us the opportunity to counter-attack, potentially to use our pace. Shane Long tends to do quite well against Arsenal. Arsenal's back four is pretty ravaged with injury as well. They're not at full strength. And, you know, they're playing on Thursday as well. So they're playing Thursday night. And, you know, as much as maybe the Belarusian champions shouldn't necessarily pose much of a problem for Arsenal, they've got to go and do a job there, because they're 1-0 down from the first leg. And
Arsenal they don't want to be embarrassed, of course. You know, they will obviously want to go out full strength and progress to the next round as well. But like you say, their defence has been ravaged by injuries. It's ageing as well. They're not the fastest, got a couple of notable absences as well at the moment. And I suppose the approach should be, you've already mentioned it, Shane Long to get in behind it. It's a big, long, wide pitch, and we love a Shane Long novelty goal at the Emirates. It was one of only four over the last four managers for Shane Long.
I think he can do it again. I mean, also I'm quite excited by the prospect of Obafemi coming back. I think, you know, he's got a bit of guile and guts. He's got a bit of pace. And I think he could cause trouble for the Arsenal defence as well. So, you know, Charlie Austin as well. He's got that incredible record against Arsenal, scored every time he's played against them. So if we get him on the pitch, it's guaranteed a goal. Records never end, as you well know. But yeah, I don't think we need to go into the game fearing Arsenal. And I think the more positive approach, the more aggressive we are, then the more likely we are to come away with either a point or, you know, who knows, maybe even the 3 points. It's not unheard of.
Well, let's hope it's not just fantasy to think about 3 points at Arsenal. And I suppose you could say we'll be boosted by the returns for, like, say, Obafemi. Armstrong could be back as well, but probably a bit too soon for Ings, and Lamine are likely to be sidelined at the weekend.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure how Ryan Bertrand is getting on as well, but I think quite a lot of us are excited about him coming back. And it'd be useful with the quick run of fixtures in such a short period of time. I think right back, we've obviously got Valerie, Ramsey and James Ward-Prowse has shown that he can play in that right wing-back position. But on the left, it'll be a big ask for Target to play all three of those games, I think. And having Stuart Armstrong back, I think, will be really positive. I think he's going to give us more than Elianusi is in midfield if we need him. I think Romeo can, you know, break up the Arsenal attacks pretty effectively. James Ward-Prowse, again, if he's put in the middle, he's been looking really great at that. And then as we move further up the pitch, Redmond, I mean, he was already having a good season, but he's now had goals and assists to that, you know, that guile and effort as well.
Let's hope he can continue it on Sunday as well. John, wrap us up with a prediction of your own. Well, hopefully, you know, who knows what happens on Thursday. Arsenal may be dumped out of the Europa League and they'll be maybe looking for a reaction, but, you know, perhaps on the flip side, they may take their foot off the gas and be a little bit complacent when they play us on Sunday.
Yeah, who knows? Hopefully they'll be knackered, and then we can kind of, you know, make the most of that. In terms of a prediction, it's such a tough one to call. Kind of my head says it's going to be a draw, but my heart is just willing for some sort of, you know, Saints. I mean, doing the double over Arsenal, it's a possibility. I mean, done the double loss to Cardiff. Maybe we can follow that up with a double win against Arsenal. Strange things happen in football. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, John, you made me look totally unprepared now. I don't have that statistic when Saints done the double over Arsenal. I think it was back in the 80s. I don't know. Somebody let us know in the comments, I suppose. John, just remind everybody where we can find you, and obviously my, appearance on the podcast this week.
Well, Freddie, here's a little tip for those of you trying to find out when the last time we did the double against Arsenal was. Alan Shearer scored a hat-trick on his first start for Southampton the last time we did it. So that will tell you the sort of age we're going back to. So, I mean, maybe, how old is Alan Shearer now? Maybe early 90s, maybe late 80s. I mean, he was only about 17, 18 when he made his first full-team debut for Saints. So who knows? What did you ask me about the podcast?
Where we can find the latest episode, mate.
Well, of course, on the Ugly Inside YouTube channel. It's always there, but we're basically everywhere where you get your podcasts. So if you do it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, you can find it there. If you like Spotify, we're on Spotify. Just type in the Saints FC podcast into Google and then just follow to your heart's content.
Excellent stuff. Really good to speak to you, mate. We'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, and here's to a famous Saints victory on Sunday.
Cheers, mate. Thank you once again then to John from the Saints FC podcast, and you can check out all the latest episodes in the card above my head. And those of you that do follow the podcast, hopefully you've got your magnificent Mo fix this week in our episode. Do make sure you follow all the channels to be kept up to date. But now is time to tell you your bite-size away guide for Arsenal. And of course, with it being a London game, most Saints fans, I would suppose, will be heading up on the train. And hey, guess what? This weekend, there are more bus replacements this Sunday on South Western Railway lines between Brockenhurst, Southampton and Eastleigh. So do check your travel before you leave. And this time it is due to engineering works. Yippee. And a top tip then, I suppose, if you are heading up on the train, it'd be cheaper to split your travel fare between Southampton and Basingstoke and then get a travel card from Basingstoke onwards to get you all across all the zones on the Underground. And speaking of the Underground, then the Emirates is served by Arsenal Station, that is, and Holloway Road Underground, or alternatively the Drayton Park Main Line. And if you're after some away pubs, there are plenty, of course, in London, but if you're after some nearby, then the closest one, just by the footbridge of the away end, is the Drayton Park pub. This often gets very busy before the game, so do head down early if you want to get yourself a spot, or alternatively head to Finsbury Park or Highbury Islington, where if you're lucky and get down early enough, you can grab yourself a breakfast in the local Wetherspoon. So there you go. So there are your pubs then, and another strike to the tally of train disruptions this season. But now then, it is time to speak to opposition, and what will Arsenal offer against Saints? Find out in our second half as I speak to AFTV. So welcome back then to our second half of this Arsenal big match preview. And who better to speak to from the Arsenal fans, the Don of football fan channels, if you like. Robbie, really good to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Not too bad.
Shall we get straight into it then? Obviously, it's been a couple of weeks since Premier League action, though, but you've had, a couple of games in Europa League and a first leg defeat in Belarus. I know you always like to go to all the games, and I'm sure that was experience in itself. And, you could say a real shock result to the system. Frustrating evening on the first leg, but didn't quite find your rhythm or take your chances. But, last night, Thursday night, a big result in the end. Fairly professional, fairly comfortable. Was it ever in doubt?
It was in doubt. It was in doubt after the first leg because it was a really poor performance. But, on Thursday night, really put in a professional performance, and really there was one little spell at the start of the game where we cleared it off the line. But apart from that, really, it was a pretty professional, dominant display by Arsenal. If not the most fluid display, but pretty dominant, and we kind of coasted home a game that could be really tricky, because those games when a team's just has to come and get one away goal, if you haven't scored an away goal yourself, then that doubles up. So all they needed to have done yesterday was score one goal. We've had to have scored three, but I think once we went 3-0 up, it was game over, and we just managed it pretty well after that. So yeah, through to the next round, Europa League, and that was good.
And a couple of big goals really from set pieces. Come at some of your centre backs, rising heights who I suppose muscle off the defenders from Bate Borisov. But I suppose that you could say historically Arsenal have fielded sort of weakened sides in the Europa League, but Unai Emery really is taking this competition seriously. Of course, he's won it twice with Sevilla. Yeah, of course, and I think the competition's taken on a new significance now, with it being a path through to the Champions League if you win it. And last season we got to the semi-finals, got beaten by Atletico Madrid, very good Atletico Madrid team. They went on to win it. I think Unai Emery's probably looking at it and saying this is a competition we can win, and get into the Champions League, which is where we need to get back to. So whether it be through that or whether it be through the Premier League, which we got a good chance of doing that still, we only 1 point off fourth place. It's vital that both in that and in the Premier League we keep winning. So the game against you guys, against Southampton, is going to be really important on Sunday, and I think that's where we messed up in the first leg as well, because it would have enabled us to have rested a load of players ahead of that Southampton game. But you guys haven't had a game for a couple of weeks, whereas we've had 2 games, and I wouldn't say last night's game would have taken a lot out of us, but, it would have been nice if we'd have been way ahead and we could have just sent out a load of kids and stuff like that, but it wasn't to be. Well, you did field a fairly strong side for both the games. Czech was in for Leno, and I suppose the big significant one last night was Mesut Ozil even managing to get 90 minutes. Will we see much rotation again on Sunday? I mean, specifically on Ozil, what's happened to him this season? Yeah, I mean, rotation-wise, I think more or less yesterday, that was like, apart from Czech, that was like our strongest team. I mean, we were, apart from Czech and Lacazette, who stupidly got himself sent off in the first leg, that's a very strong team we put out yesterday. And as I said, we wouldn't have really probably have put out all those players if we would have done the job in the first leg. But in the second leg, against Southampton on Sunday, it will be, obviously, I think, more or less the same team. And, it will be very interesting to see if he keeps Ozil in. I was asking a lot of our fans that same question. Does Ozil stay in? For me, without Ozil this season, we've lacked creativity. And I think that Ozil, I'd like to see him starting against Southampton, but you really don't know with Emery at the moment. He doesn't like the fact that Ozil doesn't work hard enough when he doesn't have the ball. But I feel at home against Southampton, I would be looking to start. Mesut Ozil. I mean, not only that, you've been ravaged by sort of injuries across all sides of the park, really, haven't you? Ramsey's been out for an extended period, but back recently, Ozil as well, I suppose, injured, if you like. And then, across the back line, your aging back line, Socrates, Koscielny, Holding, Bellerin, all the sort of long-term ones, all had their fair share of injuries. We've had a lot of that. We were on a great run. And just before I think it's when we played you guys kind of really put a halt to that. And it was the injuries across the back that's really affected us, because we were getting a really good method of playing. Rob Holding was a real key to that. He was playing really, really well, really good at playing the ball out from the back, really comfortable. Bellerin was having an excellent season. Both of those guys out. Koscielny limped off in the game against Bate Borisov on Thursday. However, I suppose the one good thing I could look on and say is that, a lot of the injured players and that, not the back ones, but are starting to come back. Socrates has returned back after his injury. And I think that's a major boost to Arsenal, because he's probably been our best centre-back this season. Scored as well against Bate Borisov. So I think we can get Koscielny back and have Socrates in there. The defence is looking a lot better than it has looked recently. But, there's quite a lot of players back for Arsenal now, so we shouldn't have the injury woes that we've been having as much. We've still got, obviously, the right-back situation is still a problem.
But hopefully with Socrates being back, that will help our defence, which has been the big Achilles heel for Arsenal this season, as usual.
Yeah, well, there it is. Arsenal have only got the second worst defensive record, if you like. Well, they've got the worst record in the top 10 and only 4 clean sheets this season, only with Fulham that's got less. I mean, I suppose you could have put it down to the injuries and the multiple rotations that you've seen over the season. You haven't seen any consistency with any sort of duos or trios in the back.
Yeah, I mean, listen, injuries is definitely a factor, but also, you know, some of the defending has been really poor. You know, even though we've had players injured and very important players like Bellerin, Holding, you know, these guys have been very important players that have been injured. However, there's still guys in there like Mustafi, like Koscielny at times. These are very experienced defenders and, you know, been sloppy sometimes in the midfield area. You know, I mean, we've given the ball away sloppily on the flanks. We've not trapped runners. So, you know, those defenders that are there are good enough, but they've just been making too many mistakes this season. And that's been the big problem with Arsenal. We always score goals, especially at home. We score lots of goals, but it's keeping a clean sheet that has been the problem for us. So if our defence was better, we could be possibly challenging for the league. You know, but the defence is just not good enough, and that's one of the problems we really have to try and fix. It's been that problem for years.
So I guess last time we met in December, you know, you was, as you mentioned sort of just a minute ago, you know, we stopped a 22-match unbeaten run with a win at St Mary's. Really sort of kicked on our season a little bit, and I guess we sort of went undefeated until the last round of Premier League fixture. Now, how much of Saints have you seen, I suppose, since then?
Yeah, I've seen quite, you know, obviously I've seen like quite a few of the highlights of your games, and you know, I think your manager, like you said, well, up until recent games, was doing a great job in that, you know, you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to get you guys attacking with pace. He really wants, you know, runners in the team. I've noticed he's really been giving a lot of youngsters a chance in the team, and was doing really well up until recent games. So for us looking at it, I'll be looking at it, if I was the Arsenal manager, I'll be looking at it and say, well, you know what, they're coming under a lot of pressure. They come into this game under a lot of pressure, in that really, you know, they're back in that sort of relegation trouble. I think it was only a point or
only 1 point from Cardiff.
Yeah, Cardiff, I think they're playing on Friday night. So, you know, and I think Cardiff are at home now. If Cardiff to win that game, puts a lot of pressure on Southampton. I think Arsenal need to try and see if we can exploit that. So I think when we first played you, it's a little different in that we had, like you said, we had a lot of injuries. And also I think he just arrived, didn't he? Which seems to happen to us a lot. We seem to play a lot of teams when they just changed their manager. And it was definitely, you know, they definitely really put it in for him in that game. They would have had a couple of weeks off. So they're going to be fresh and ready for this game. And, you know, I've noticed... in watching some of your games, I think Redmond's like a completely different player. He's been transformed. We're definitely going to have to make sure we deal with players like him. But, yeah, I'd be just looking on it and saying to myself, it's a different type of game this time, because it's not like that first game where it didn't really matter what the result was, because, you know, it's your first game, just have a go. If he lost that game, he could turn around at the end of it and say, well, I'm just looking at who's who and things like that. Now he's been in there for a little bit. He needs to get something out of the game. And don't get me wrong, so do we. You know what I mean? We're trying to chase down that top four. We need to these are the games that everybody's looking on and saying, we need to win this game. We've got you guys, we've got Bournemouth at home, 2 games. And then after that, we've got 2 very difficult games against Tottenham and Man United. So these 2 games we're looking at and saying, we need to get these games under our belt. But we can't take Southampton lightly. But I think it's going to be a different type of game. It always seems to be that way when we play you at home. It's like chalk and cheese. We play at your place. Such a difficult game for us. We always seem to struggle at your place. But normally when we play you at the Emirates, I can't remember losing to you guys at the Emirates.
All right, mate. So all that being said, then a couple of difficult, I suppose you want some important points on the board over the next couple of weeks, but just wrap us up with a quick score prediction, mate.
Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1. We always concede, right? Despite the clean sheet we kept against Batty Borisov, we always seem to concede. So, but I do think at home, we are strong at home, even though we haven't been playing blistering football this season. But we are strong at home. We'll take a bit out of us, that game that we had the other night, but I do expect us to get over the line. So I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal.
All right, difficult afternoon then for Saints. Really good to speak to you, and I appreciate your time, Robbie. We've had a couple of alarms going off. So we've got there in the end. Yeah. But I've edited this so you guys at home can't hear the alarms. But in the usual places, AFTV. Thanks for joining us, Robbie.
Thank you.
Big thanks again then to Robbie from AFTV, and you can find them on all the channels and all the platforms, and I'm pretty sure it'll be gold if Saints do snatch a win this Sunday. But that does wrap up this week's preview, the first of the week, of course, and be sure to check back for our match reactions after the game and later on this week for our Fulham and Manchester United preview shows. So thank you very much then for watching and listening along. One thing left from me to say is come on, you Saints.